Hey, what's up everyone? Team Lynch Spirit of Adventure. Okay, here it is, the video, part 2 to my walkthrough and intro of Bertha, my Ford Transit van, 22.5 feet, dually. I have 6 months on the van now, about 15,000 miles. I've taken it cross country from Utah all the way to Virginia, across the Midwest, and then following back along the Gulf Coast, taking it into the mountains of Colorado in 8-degree weather, and I've been out in southern Utah and Arizona and New Mexico in kind of desert-like conditions in the fall. What have I learned? What do I regret? What would I change about my next van? Let's check it out in the video. All right, everyone, so starting on the outside of the van, it's a super bright day, so if I'm kind of squinty, forgive me. But it is a beautiful day. We had really bad weather here in Salt Lake. It's our first weekend with sunny weather, so that's why I want to get this video in. So starting on the outside, I don't know if this is a transit thing. I know that Mercedes has a short version or short wheelbase van and a long wheelbase van, 144 inches on the short, I think 170 on the long. This is a 148 inch wheelbase, but the van is still about less than a foot difference between the stretched Sprinter total body length in this van. And so what that's caused is some of this, what I call it like a hangover, but not the fun kind of hangover or anything like that. A hangover from basically your back tire to your bumper. And the Ford Transit builds I've noticed, at least the most recent ones, obviously Coachman, Forest River made this one. There's Winnebago and a couple, not actually Winnebago, but Pleasureway and a couple other van manufacturers that also use the same transit chassis with the dually and a 148 inch wheelbase. They also have this hangover like this, and normally this wouldn't be a big deal for me, but I've actually had it to where if you look around the back here, I have this hitch that's right here, and this is actually scraped quite a few times underneath, just coming out of just normal driveways, McDonald's drive-thrus, stuff like that. And so like the bottom of this is actually really rough, and in different parts of the hitch it's actually really rough and raw metal from me scraping on that. Hasn't been too great. So all in all, the overhang can be an issue. Just coming off of slanted driveways, roads, whatever, and going up slanted driveways, as odd as it sounds, even curbs that have that little ditch for water drainage, it can cause you issues. The second thing, I actually did a little bit of a Instagram kind of post and stuff about it, but yeah, the black tank valve being back here on this rear bath version and the gray tank valve being up there, I've covered in my first walkthrough that my only tank that's outside of this van is that gray tank. So that means the entire tank, to include a dump valve and where the inlets come in from inside the van, are exposed to the weather. The black tank is not, just that elbow. But without the sufficient amount of RV antifreeze in the tanks, even these being 15 or 16 gallon tanks, you still need to have at least a half a gallon of RV antifreeze in the winter in the tank. I recommend 1 full gallon for every, like a 1 in 15 ratio, if you're going to actually use your tanks to capacity, or else that valve will freeze. You'll open it up and it will be the loudest silence you've ever heard. It will freak you out because you'll think you'll have to remove a full black tank or replace it because you've busted something. It'll freak you out. Don't do that. So that's another thing kind of learned about this, that some of the bigger RVs, the vans don't have it, but they have like a bay that's totally heated, where they have a little space heater in there to keep all the valves that you'd normally dump with thawed. A van will never have that, at least not these kind of builds that kind of look like regular vans on the outside, so just be aware. The other thing to know, and especially if you watch a lot of YouTube videos or people's Instagram, what they're tweeting, even TikToks nowadays of people doing van life stuff, is going off-road, Forest Service roads, like just dirt roads, things like that. Let me show you what that looks like in a van like this, in a lot of vans that are very similar to this as well. It's the ground clearance. Okay, in terms of ground clearance, this is under my van, midship, driver's side. This is my gray tank valve. You can't really see it, it's probably off frame, but this is my propane tank. And just on the other side of this propane tank is where my generator sits. The propane tank and the generator both sit about 7.5 inches off the ground. That is the amount of ground clearance you have in a van that has onboard propane, that's not a disposable or removable propane tank. It's usually mounted under the van. In any van that has a generator that's undermounted, it's permanently mounted on the van, is going to have to go outside and will have to take up some of your ground clearance. So in this van, even though I have a dually, even though I have sumo springs on it, a slightly higher ride, I still have about 7.5 inches of ground clearance, and it happens to be in the middle of the van between the two tires. So what that means with 7.5 inches of ground clearance is that if I go on a regular rutted road, and if those ruts are more than 7.5 inches deep, the middle, that kind of raised soil, actually will scrape my generator and my propane tank below. It's not a good feeling. There's also parts underneath the van, how you check the oil on the generator. There's a panel you can remove to get to a circuit breaker back there. There are things down there that you don't necessarily want jostled around or scraped with brush. So even if it is flat, but you're driving over just brush, it could be bad for the generator. So overall, it is somewhat difficult, unless I know exactly where I'm going to go and I know what the roads look like. It is difficult to take this on a lot of Forest Service roads that you'd want to go on in a normal kind of SUV. And probably the last thing on the outside of the van, you may have noticed I took off the bike rack that was sticking here. I took this off, and the weirdest thing is that for a while I could not get it off. When I took the cross-country trip from Utah to Virginia to go visit my little brother is when I actually was able to take it off. He had the tools to be able to help me, because this bolt, it was this bolt right here, it actually got rusted and locked into place. I couldn't get it off with any vice grips. We actually had to saw the bolt off and then kind of still have to rip it a little bit, because some of the rust and things kind of mated the metal together. So it was really odd. Even though there was this plastic kind of buffer here, the bolt still got leakage of water, still rusted closed, and plus the capacity is only 100 pounds on this door. So what I'd recommend is do not get the bike racks that come with these vans. Instead, get one that goes on the hitch. Okay, so inside the van, talking about some of the things I've noticed, learned, starting again backwards, kind of working forwards. We're back outside the van on the back side, working our way forward. It's really kind of all back here, really. So if you see here, as you know from my older video, I have a rear bath version of this floor plan. There's 3 different floor plans for this van, and I'm not real sure how the other kind of foot pans look in those other baths. I know that they have the same circular drain. I don't know if they have the decorative kind of long metal, metal piece that kind of hides the drain, so it looks like one big flat piece in my shower. That's how my shower is. But underneath that pan, there is that regular drain. It looks like a regular household drain, but it's smaller. That thing is like a magnet for dog hair or people hair. So if you are traveling with any pets whatsoever, and you see people, like, let's say on Instagram, YouTube, traveling with their dogs, stuff like that, like, they're having dog issues with the hair in their drains here. That thing almost every single day gets so much hair on it to where you cannot shower until you do a full cleaning of the shower. That made me actually get a Shark hand vac. And if I remember, before I get any kind of wetness in that shower, that's the most effective thing to do, is actually take a hand vac and vacuum the entire shower out. Really make sure you get the drain before you put any moisture in there to make the hair stick, or else, yeah, you're going to be taking like Q-tips and like tissues and like trying to wipe every little hair off so it doesn't go into that drain. I don't even want to think about what it would look like if too much hair got into the pipes and I had to like chase like hair clogs and stuff like that in this van. Don't want to do that, so it's kind of got me freaked out, actually. Another thing in the back of the van, in the first review, I talked about the different cabinet space. The front cabinet on the driver's side's got a bunch of control systems for like the Firefly for your tanks, your light systems. This has, I keep my manuals and stuff in the van and remote controls just in case I need stuff if I'm traveling, just how something works, forget it. I forget how it works. But this also has my Jensen stereo, and it has like a DVD player for this TV. So legit, it is a DVD player, not a Blu-ray. This is a 2020 model, and I did not know that they put an actual legit DVD player. You cannot play Blu-rays in this thing, and it is incredibly hard to find DVDs unless you're at like some truck stop in BFE nowhere and you're looking in the bargain clearance bin. Then you can find some DVDs of the greatest 90s movies you'd ever want to watch. But Blu-rays, it will not play. Also noticed that the van builder for this, Forest River, even though there's a bunch of speakers hooked up, and this was kind of advertised as being able to play movies through the speakers, only the front stereo head is actually attached to all the speakers, to include the ones in the back door. This one is not attached to any of the surround sound stuff. So if you're going to watch a movie on the TV, and I use Fire TV, I have a little Fire TV stick right here. It is just these speakers on this little TV. And this is not a smart TV. For the 2021 model of this, they did put an LG smart TV. They can stream and do all that stuff. But if you have a 2020 or below, earlier, you have to get a Fire TV stick. And just be aware this thing will not play DVDs, nor will it stream music. You can't use it, basically. You have to use your front one. And I've noticed it moves a little bit. I don't know if it did that before, and there's some Velcro kind of holding it down onto the carpet, but it's like a little box, I guess, for them to install it. And this thing has become a gremlin. It leaks, well, not leaks, it squeaks like crazy, to where I just want to come back here and like pick this thing up and just want to punch it right in its face because it squeaks so freaking much. And so the last trip I did, I tried everything to get my travel partner back here. I'm driving, I'm like hitting rough roads and like making it squeak just so this person can like wedge paper plates or napkins or Q-tips to try to make it stop. It will not stop. It is a bastard. So I'm going to rip this whole thing out and actually put an Xbox up there, which is what I would use this TV for when I'm not streaming stuff anyway, to play Xbox. So there's that. Another thing about the van, and I think I've talked about it in my first video as well. I talked about the turbulence, this being a high top van. So this thing is like 9 feet 10 inches. I always say I need 10 feet of clearance to do anything. So that's about how tall it is. And I want to say it's like 8 or 9 feet wide. So it's not like what you would think of a dually being so wide, like it can't fit in normal parking spaces, things like that. So not super wide, but tall. Going down the highway, you do feel buffeting, right, from the semis and things like that. As you're coming up behind them, as you're passing them, you'll feel the wind resistance hit you or go away depending on how they're blocking the wind. What you don't take into account is gusts of wind and how unsettling they can be in the van, to where if you're making a turn and the wind is kind of working against you, when it starts working for you in the direction you're turning, all of a sudden your turning is much more efficient. You feel like you're going to go off the road. Vice versa, the other way, it kind of freaks you out. And the way that the van is set up, I don't know if it's so airtight and built so well it does this, but it actually makes a really bad squealing sound when huge gusts of wind hit you. And maybe if you had this van in any other parts of the country, it just wouldn't matter if you weren't out west like me. But where I drive to, between the different mountain ranges, it's a lot of flat, open, kind of high desert with a lot of high desert wind. And so when I say there's like a squealing, it's not like a whoosh. It is hits on this side, and you hear on the right side of the van just whoosh, whoosh, and then the other side, same thing. Hits on the right side, you'll hear the left side of the van like the air is trying to push itself out every little gap it can, and it's so airtight, the insulation's so good that it makes this high-pitched squeal, which is a little unsettling again at highway speeds as you're driving, getting hit with these wind gusts. Don't know how I'd fix that, but it's something I've learned putting about 15,000 miles on this fan that you need to be aware of if you're going to drive this thing over 60 or 70 miles an hour. Moving to the front of the van, you can see I have Nanook, Juno, laying here, but they love sitting here whenever I'm not driving and stuff like that. Even when I have this turned around, they like to sit in that chair. But the front windshield, the visibility at this windshield, amazing. It is huge. It's all glass on the front. You don't have any kind of weird like drop off with the hood like you do in some vans, where it feels like you're hanging over the road, like you're driving a flat, paneled bus in the front. There's also not a huge kind of long hood on it either. It's just right. But because you have this huge windshield, it attracts rocks like a magnet as well. And so 6 months, 15,000 miles or so, I actually have 3 rock marks, cracks on the windshield that I have to go get patched before they kind of spider out. 3 different ones, 3 separate incidences. And I don't tailgate or follow too close or anything like that. So it's kind of weird. So I think maybe it's just because I have so much windshield. The other thing to kind of note is that I upgraded, and I got these really heavy duty kind of insulated window blockers or window shades in the front for when I boondock or just in a KOA, and they have magnets on the edges, so they go on the edge. The ones on the door go on the edge of the door frame. Really good, staying on there. The one on the windshield, it kind of just gravity sticks in there, which not that well because it's super heavy duty and thick and insulated. So you use kind of the sun shades to kind of hold it in place. What I've noticed about that front windshield, especially in the mountains, and it's a dry cold in the mountains, that in the morning when you wake up, that windshield on the inside of the van, it will just be covered in condensation. Maybe this is a normal thing for regular RVs or anybody who stays in their vehicle with these kind of sunshades up like that. But in the winter time, when you're using it, instead of condensation, you just have a solid sheet of ice on your windshield. And when you go to try to wipe it down or turn on the defrosters, you end up having just a torrent of water go down the front of your windshield, inside the windshield, inside your little vents and stuff like that. Probably won't be a big deal because it's not like pouring water down there, but it is like straight running because you're melting ice and stuff like that. Little unsettling. Make sure you have a chamois cloth. I usually have a microfiber towel that I keep up front for when that starts to happen, and I wipe that down. But I've noticed behind my rear view mirror I have like a camera for like the lane departure kind of safety stuff. I can't get to that stuff, so usually about an hour after I've gotten through boondocking where I have any kind of condensation that even frosts over, even if it doesn't fully freeze, for an hour after driving I'll still have water leaking from that unit behind my rearview mirror, and it leak inside the van's windshield, and you have to kind of wipe that stuff up unless you don't care about those streaks in the water and stuff. Other than that, the van has been great. Bertha has been great. Some future upgrades I'm going to do. I'm going to take out the AGM battery. I have about 300 amp hours of power on this van through an AGM battery. The lithium versions that use the Lithionics, that's what this van manufacturer, that's their brand of lithium batteries, power systems they use. They use Lithionics. The Lithionics option they offer is I think 600 or 630 amp hours. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to upgrade, and once my AGM battery stops holding a charge all that efficiently, you can actually drop in or replace that battery with a lithium battery that's about the same. I actually have 330 amp hours of power, and there's a 330 amp hour lithium battery that's an 8D cell, which is what I have in here. It's the same dimensions, but it weighs about half or less than half of the battery that I have in here. So I'm going to drop in, replace that one, and then find a way that maybe I can drop in another 330 amp hour lithium battery, and it essentially will be almost the same as a lithium option, except I won't have the second alternator to help charge the lithium batteries faster, and I'll still have the generator as well as a backup, unless I decide to get rid of the generator. Going forward in a future van, I probably would definitely make sure I get the all-wheel drive Transit model. I have the rear wheel drive, such a hard word to say, version. If you know anything about living in the West, even on sunny days, if you have a road that's not facing south and it's not in direct sunlight in the mountains, it can hold ice for several weeks after it's been snowy or cold or whatever, and you don't necessarily want to hit that stuff going uphill, even slightly in a vehicle that doesn't have front wheel drive or all wheel drive. So I'd probably definitely do that. I would definitely make sure that I get KO2 tires. The tires, they're all season tires on here, have been fantastic where I have had to drive in snow or ice. It's actually held the road pretty well, especially because there's almost, or I think just over 4,000 pounds on each axle, how they distributed the weight. So you have 2 tons of weight on each axle, which really helps you hug the road. But the KO2s, I've heard, will still fit within the wheel well. You don't have to make any modifications to the suspension, but it'll give you about an inch and a half of extra ride height and clearance. There's also people that have modified their Sumo springs to where they get about an inch there as well. So there's a guy in the Facebook group that I'm part of that, people that have these types of vans, and he's able to get about a 2-inch lift gain by having KO2s and a slightly beefier than the Sumo beefy suspension installed on his van. And keep in mind, like I said, outside the van, if you're watching people go off-grid, off-road, and they have the back of the van open and they're like nature and it's freaking awesome, more than likely they had a van that doesn't have a generator, onboard propane, and that way it's probably not set up like this van to like really boondock extended with comfort, with a full shower and a flush toilet and all that. If anybody has a van like this, it was sketchy as hell for them to get it back there, and I have done it, and it's sketchy. I'm white knuckling, I'm like looking, I'm using spotters and stuff, even pictures I've posted with my van, and I'll put some up right now as I'm talking. Those were sketchy as hell. It took me a lot to get back there, and I had to use a spotter. It really, really was hard, but once I got back there, it was really enjoyable. Yeah, other than that, I will get another van. This probably will not be my last Bertha. For the next one, all-wheel drive. Definitely still want the EcoBoost engine. The power has been fantastic in the mountains. The reliability for Ford and the build of the chassis has been great. Forest River, Coachman, their build quality has been really, really good too, and their customer service after the sale has been great. And if you look at the future builds they've done, almost every single year they've taken the feedback of owners and people actually using these vans, and they've incorporated that into the next year's build. So things like this only having 28 gallons of water and having a Truma hot water system, let's put a recirculator on it. So that way you're not wasting hot water. You're not turning your water on waiting for it to get hot. Let's recirculate that water. And when you turn it on, it's immediately hot, so you don't waste water. The 2021s or the 2022s have that. So, and it's something that this van doesn't have, but if I could install it today, I'd probably install it today. Vanlife's been good to me. If you haven't checked it out, please check it out. Even if you don't do it full time, and I'm determined I'm not a full-time van life person, determined I can't necessarily do that because I have other hobbies, riding Harleys and other types of motorcycles and stuff. I just would not be able to fit my entire life in this van, but I could fit a lot of it in here. So if you haven't checked out doing at least a hybrid van life, having a way that you can travel, still work, be connected to the universe, and still your professional life, I highly recommend it. If you did like this video, please like, subscribe, comment. Also check out my other channel, Beefcake Lynch Gaming. Every Sunday I do a Fortnite stream with my two nephews that are 8 and 12 as we try to unlock skins and just dominate everyone there. If you have kids, nephews, whatever that like Fortnite or video games, check it out on Sundays, Beefcake Lynch Gaming. Until next time, I'll see you in the next video.